Welcome back to the show. This is your weekly breakdown of what actually matters in U.S. politics. I am your host, as always, Vlad Mabus, and today we're going to be covering the biggest stories shaping Washington right now. It's been a heavy week, and honestly, most of it comes down to one thing: war, power, and the political fallout here at home. Let's get into it. Oh, let me tell you, we were at war once again. It seems like no matter what happens, we are always in war. Every time there's a Republican administration. I mean, always. Why is it every time we have a Republican president, we have to go to war? The only time I think we weren't in war is during Trump's first term. That was the last time we had a Republican well, I don't know. Should I count that? I don't know if I should count that or not. Because technically, even though it was his first term and he did, I think, launch a few airstrikes here and there. But yeah, I don't know if I would necessarily count that. But yeah, it seems like the Democrats learned their lesson a long time ago when it came to war, because Lyndon B. Johnson, when he was president, he deployed troops to Vietnam. There was the Vietnam War, and yes, it lasted through his term, and then of course part of Nixon's. But Nixon did in fact bring our troops home. That's the one thing I will give him credit for, even though he was as corrupt can be with the whole Watergate scandal. So, yeah, and that's pretty much where Democrats learned. They learned from LBJ that it's war is not good, because it just reminds me of, you go back to this past election, there was a lot of comparisons between the 2024 election and the 1968 election, because LBJ was pressured by his own party not to run for another term. And then it was after the primaries and everything else that Hubert Humphrey took his place, became the Democratic nominee after the primaries. And basically they just shot themselves in the foot, and Nixon became president. And then they did the same thing in 2024. Biden said, "I'm running again. I'm going to do it. We're not done yet." And then he was pressured by the Democrats to drop out because of, well, that horrible CNN debate he did against Trump, that many Democrats were like, dude, you do not need to run for another term. I mean, it's just, and the funny thing is, if they would have held primary debates, they could have caught this a lot sooner and then realized, yeah, he's not fit to run for another term. And they could have pressured him to resign right then and there. And then Kamala Harris taking his place, had the Democratic primaries, all that. And they probably wouldn't be in this mess right now. Well, probably still would. But I mean, listen, I didn't like Biden at all. He just was not. He wasn't doing the crazy shit Trump is doing, even though Trump says he was. He's weaponizing the Justice Department against me. This is a witch hunt, blah, blah, blah. And yet here is the Oompa Loompa now in office doing basically everything he accused Biden of doing. So, yeah, there's that. I don't even know where to get started on that, but let's go back to the Iran war right now, that he is sending, what was it? I think it was like up to 7,000 troops. I can't remember.
Iran. We begin with the U.S. now deploying an additional 2,200 Marines to the Middle East, leading some to speculate of a possible ground operation inside Iran. But tonight, President Trump claiming the administration is very close to, quote, meeting their objectives and is considering winding down military efforts. So a bunch of Navy sailors, along with Marines, are being deployed to the Middle East. They're not stepping foot in Iran yet, at least let's hope not. But remember, there is the War Powers Act that technically Trump could have them
well, have boots on the ground. Whether he has them parachute from planes or whatever the case. So there's that. And I will tell you this right now, the war powers needs to go. How that even got passed is beyond me. They had Nixon basically doing what Trump's doing and thought that he could do whatever, I wouldn't say whatever the hell he wanted, but I'm pretty sure Nixon was a strong believer in unitary executive theory. So, yeah, it's this is a mess. But I will say this right now that the war powers needs to go. This is not what it's intended because if you look at the bigger picture here, any president could launch a strike, which Trump has already done, has launched strikes in Iran. And guess what Iran has done? No surprise here. They retaliated. They are still retaliating against both Israel and the US by targeting their allies, by targeting military bases, all that. And here's one thing, there won't be a regime change in Iran. As much as I don't like the Iranian government, I don't. They are a tyrannical theocracy, a place where the Quran is law. And you look at like back in the 70s before this theocracy took control of Iran, there was actually freedom. Like Iran looked like America. But now that they have all these restrictions on what women can and can't do, what men can and can't do, if there's anything against Islam, it's illegal. Anything that's haram. And for those who don't know what haram is, that basically means, sin in Islam. Sin in Islam. If I don't know if the first time I said that was clear enough, but there's that. Getting on to other things. So listen, when you talk about regime change in Iran, yes, they killed the Ayatollah. I forgot his name, but they have a contingency plan in place that happens, just like we do here in the United States when it comes to the president. If the president resigns or is impeached or passes away, basically what I'm saying, if there is a vacancy for the presidency, then there is a chain of command. The vice president becomes president, which we've seen before. And if the vice president can't do it for whatever reason, then it's the Speaker of the House. Same thing over in Iran. They always have a successor in place in case the Ayatollah dies. So getting to more things, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, I'm sorry. Correction, the Secretary of War, which honestly, yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that name change because, yeah, that's basically what they're all about. War. Said that these men and women that were killed in these strikes were telling him, finish this fight, which is debunking one of the family members of the one of the men that was killed said that he talked to Pete Hegseth, and that's not what his son said. I mean, how sick do you have to be to lie to the American people and say, "Oh yeah, these men and women of the armed forces want us to avenge their deaths and everything else."
Honor their sacrifice. Do not waver. Do not stop until the job is done. My response, along with that of the president, was simple. Of course, we will finish this.
Which is not true whatsoever. And he's using that to prolong this war. They say, oh, it'll only be a couple of weeks. It'll only be a couple of weeks. Even the president, it'll only be a couple of weeks, no more. Because right there, he's lying. He doesn't even have a deadline. He doesn't of when this is going to end. Neither does Pete Hegseth. Oh, it'll be a couple of weeks. They are just giving the runaround. I mean, yeah, they're just getting the runaround. I don't know what else I could say about this, but this is the War Powers resolution needs to be repealed. Only Congress should have the ability to declare war. That's what it says in the Constitution. There should not be exemption. That goes for everything. It goes for airstrikes, everything. Boots on the ground, whatever. Because here's the problem with it. We just saw, like I said before, we just saw what's happening. He's launching airstrikes. Iran is retaliating, which no surprise there. And if they retaliate enough to where, let's say, hundreds of our troops are killed by one of their attacks, it forces Congress's hand. And that's what I believe the president is doing. He wants Iran to retaliate so bad that Congress will have no choice but to declare war. That's how I see it. So the president can, this is how the president can manipulate Congress, is that they can launch an airstrike somewhere, keep launching, poke the bear to where the country, this other country retaliates so bad that it forces Congress's hand to declare war. And that's why the War Powers resolution needs to be, there needs to be reform. Now, I will say this, I was reading the War Powers resolution, and one thing actually came to an idea of mine is because it says, what is it? That the president can launch airstrikes. The president can deploy troops for a maximum of 60 days. After that, the president has to go through Congress to get an extension. So when I'm reading that, we need that for the Insurrection Act. If the president decides to use the Insurrection Act, he can for 60 days. It would be active for 60 days. It's 60 days. After that, he would have to get approval from Congress to extend it. That's what we need for the Insurrection Act. Because look at how many times he has threatened to use it. He threatened to use it on cities like Los Angeles and Minneapolis. He tried to deploy troops in Chicago and Portland, Oregon. Now, he did succeed in Los Angeles, but not with the other major Democratic cities. I think, what is it? He did with New Orleans, but he didn't have to go as far because Louisiana has a Republican governor, so he was able to deploy the troops. And the same with Tennessee is they have a Republican governor, so they deployed troops into Memphis. Speaking of that, speaking of the National Guard, this is crazy. I can't believe I'm actually hearing what I heard, but he is keeping the National Guard activated in DC until basically his term is over. So 2029 to the end of his term. So if you go to DC from now until the end of his term, you're going to see guardsmen walk in the streets. And this is just a waste of time. It's a waste of our troops' time. to be doing something that DC Metro Police can handle? It's ridiculous. It is completely ridiculous. It is a waste of taxpayer money. So, with that being said, oh, let's see here. Let's see here. What else can I tell you? Oh, yes, yes, yes. Here's something. Trying to think. Oh, yeah. Yes. No, I got it. Sorry. My apologies. Pete Hegseth, or I shouldn't say Pete Hegseth, the Trump administration. There we go. Let's bring Trump and the rest of them into this conversation. Is asking Congress for more money to fund this war.
$200 billion. I think that number could move, obviously. It takes money to kill bad guys.
To fork over the money to fund this war because there's no game plan here. There is none. And they want to, a lot of members of Congress are saying, if you want more money, we need a game plan here. What is the game plan? Because otherwise you're not getting any funding until we figure this out. So what is the game plan? Well, they don't have a game plan. It's really just ridiculous I mean, their game plan right now is we're just gonna bomb the shit out of them. We're just gonna keep bombing them, dropping bombs, and this is endless. This is a forever war. Here's what I think is happening. Trump is being manipulated to send our troops. And I think I know what's going on. Is that senators like Lindsey Graham, the biggest neocon there is, biggest warmonger there is using what happened with Greenland. Now remember, Trump wanted Greenland. He was going to do whatever it took to get Greenland. Luckily, that did not happen. He got so much pushback, bipartisan pushback, he ended up scrapping those plans because even Republicans were like, even his staunch supporters were like, no, because it's a territory. It's a Danish territory. And Denmark is a NATO ally. And Republicans do not want Trump sabotaging that. He does not want them to screw everything up with NATO. Because if he were to do that, you can guarantee that the US would be kicked out of NATO. 2, if he did attack, most likely NATO is going to side with Denmark because they're going to see the US as the aggressor. So they're going to side with Denmark. And listen, I will say this right now that yes, our military is big. Is it big enough to take on every single country's military that are members of NATO? Hell no. Our military is big. It ain't that big. We'd be severely outnumbered and it would be chaos. It would just be chaos. And that's why it's not going to happen. And he ended up scrapping those plans. But here's the thing. Trump wanted Greenland because Greenland has minerals. It's like, you could say it's almost like a gold mine up there. Well, Iran also has minerals. They have uranium. They have stockpiles of uranium, from what it sounds like. And Trump, or maybe that's what Trump's saying, I don't know. But behind the scenes, Trump's like, yeah, I want to invade them because I want their uranium. So that's why he wants to send troops into Iran, because he wants those minerals. He wants uranium. That's what it is. But here's the cost of what's happening because of this war. This has caused a ripple effect. This is what happened during the Iraq War. I remember when I was a kid, when George Bush first got into office, gas was, let's see, $1 something a gallon. Man, were those the days. And in some, and that was in only some states. Hell, back then, if you went to a red state, it was like only a few cents a gallon. And now look, $5 a gallon. I remember one time years ago, I joked with my grandma. It was just after the Iraq war started, and gas prices were already starting to go up. And I joked with her, I'm like, well, what are you going to do when gas gets to $4 a gallon? You know, it was a joke. I never thought it would get that high. And then she'd be like, oh, well, we're going to be walking if that happens. Lo and behold, here we are. It's not just at $4 a gallon. It is now almost to $5 a gallon. And if you go down to Southern California, like, you know, the Los Angeles area, it is probably almost to $8 a gallon. So maybe we'll get to $10 a gallon. Who knows? In SoCal, I don't know. So yes, this is, what are we getting out of this? So before I stop with the whole Iran war, we're going to move on to other things. There was one thing. There was actually I think it was NBC. Was it NBC, CBS? I can't remember. I think it was NBC, where they sent one of their reporters to a small town in Pennsylvania. And oh my God, I cannot believe this. Some of the voters in the area, and one guy said, I could not believe what this guy said.
Somebody else should have done it a couple of years ago, the last 3 other presidents.
Are you willing to pay higher prices at the pump if that's the cost?
Yeah, I'm willing to pay a little more. Yeah.
Really? Really? That's what you're going with. You're okay with gas prices going up. Really? I just couldn't believe it. I just could not believe it. But there was one woman that they interviewed who had a different opinion on the president.
If you could say something to President Trump and he was going to hear you right now, what would it be?
You're a worthless pile of
And you voted for him how many times?
3 times. That was my bad. Apparently, I'm an idiot.
That's exactly what she said. And she voted for him 3 times. So 2016, 2020, 2024. And look at where we are. So let me give you guys the closing on, we'll put the whole Iran war thing, shut the book on that for now, but right now the biggest story in US politics is escalating conflict with Iran. President Donald Trump is facing growing pressure over how the war is being handled. The administration has suggested operations could slow down soon. They could slow down soon. But on the ground, military activity is still ongoing. This has quickly become more than just a foreign policy issue. It's now the central political issue in the United States. Why? Because it's hitting everything at once: public opinion, gas prices, and the balance of power in Washington. So, yeah, there's that. But don't you worry, ladies and gentlemen. Congress is pushing back. That brings us to Capitol Hill, where tensions are rising. Democrats are calling for hearings and a potential vote to limit the president's war powers. They argue that Congress, not just the White House, should decide whether the U.S. stays in this conflict. Thank you. That's exactly. It should be Congress, not the president. Republicans, for the most part, are backing Trump. What a surprise. But there are signs of cracks. Some lawmakers are starting to question how long this war could last and what the end game could actually be. At the heart of this debate is a familiar question in American politics: who really has the authority to take this country to war? And I have an answer. It is Congress. That too. It says it in the Constitution. It is Congress. Not the president, Congress. So I know I digged into this a little bit with gas prices, and let me tell you, yeah, it's not looking good. I think they're still climbing, to be honest with you. I don't think it's stopped. They're still going up because you don't attack the freaking. Could you imagine if well, and not only that, it's not necessarily, I would say, us that's causing gas prices to go. I mean, it is, but because of us, Iran's also retaliating against Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia is like a gold mine when it comes to oil. So that's another thing. They're attacking one of the biggest distributors of oil in the world, Saudi Arabia. So it's just, oh God, it's a mess, people. It is a mess. It is a mess. But let's get on to something else, because I think I've talked enough about both the Iran war and the rising gas prices. So let's get on to our next topic. Courts step in. Now to the courts, where there were two major developments this week. First, a federal judge ruled that a Pentagon policy limiting journalists' access was unconstitutional. The case was brought by the New York Times. This is a significant moment for press freedom, especially during wartime, when access to information becomes even more critical. In another case, a judge ordered the restoration of Voice of America, a government-funded media outlet that has been dismantled. The administration is pushing back, but for now, the courts are clearly asserting limits on executive power. Yes, because that's what the separation of powers are. This is a guy that said that he could do, like you just saw, this guy thinks he can do whatever he wants. No, you can't. You can't do whatever you want. So, because of the Iran war, one thing I wanted to point out is, and it's not so much on Iran, it's the division. There's a schism in MAGA world. Now, Trump likes to claim these people are MAGA. They're not MAGA. I am MAGA. But the likes of Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Joe Rogan are all turning on him because of this. Because this is something he did not campaign. He did the opposite. He said he was going to end the forever wars, not start up the forever wars again. But can you take anything this guy takes seriously? Can you? Because nobody can. So you just can't take the guy seriously anymore. I mean, I realized this back in like 2022 when you had all the Republicans saying that there was going to be a huge red wave, and no, there was a red trickle. And then I saw the true Trump, and I'm just like, on the road to him getting the nomination, I just told myself, if this guy becomes the nominee, they're going to lose. They are going to lose because he was a 34 okay. He was convicted on 34 felony counts. There we go. What does that tell you? That should be the writing on the wall right there. Did you really think that this guy was going to obey the law? No. Of course, he was going to defy orders. Because that's what criminals do. Criminals always defy court orders. And then the judges have to put their foot down and hold them and threaten to hold them in contempt if they do not comply. So, but that was pretty much it with the Iran for this week. I mean, there wasn't really anything else besides, oh yes, I think there was one other thing that happened, and that was the whole SAVE Act. Now, Trump is pressuring the Senate to pass it, even though Senate Majority Leader John Thune, okay, majority, not minority, okay, Majority Leader, yes, I said it right, has told them time and time again, they do not have the votes. Now Republicans are going so far, we need to end the filibuster. We need to end the filibuster to the point where even John Cornyn sold out and said that they needed to end the filibuster. You know what's just amazing? The only people that want to end the filibuster are the people, the party in power, the party that has the majority. It's always the party that's in the majority that wants to abolish the filibuster. Because you go back to like 2020, post 2020, after Biden got elected, and the Democrats were going on and on about how they wanted to abolish the filibuster. Well, as soon as Trump became president again, they shut up, didn't they? I've not heard one Democrat say that the filibuster needs to go. Not once. And now it's the Republicans saying, oh, we need to end the filibuster. It always flips because now you have Republicans that are for it and Democrats that are against it. But even some Republicans are holding on to it because they know what happens if they were. Once they get rid of the filibuster, there can be no coming back from it, because there is a chance that Democrats are going to take both chambers of Congress. And if that happens, which is most likely going to happen, it always flip-flops. The Republicans will be powerless to stop them from passing their legislation. And Republicans had warned Trump about that. Of course, he doesn't care because he doesn't care because it's preventing the SAVE Act from getting passed. And this idiot was just like, I'm not signing any legislation until the SAVE Act is passed. Well, go ahead, because, okay, so there's one of two things he's saying here. He's either going to refuse to sign it into law if it gets to his desk, which, from what I heard, after he can do, but after 10 days, it automatically becomes law. So most likely what he would do instead of doing that is he would just veto it. Well, guess what, Donnie boy? The founding fathers were clearly aware of that. And the Senate has the power to override your veto. That's how it's always been. In fact, they actually did it in his first term. They actually overrode one of his vetoes. So, yeah, he wasn't too happy about that, but I don't even think he remembers it, honestly. But who knows? Who knows? So, that's pretty much what is going on in this country right now. The chaos. Complete chaos. Let's see, there was Save Act. But yes, let's get to one other thing. So the attack on the First Amendment, we're seeing this. The FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr decided that, oh, we're going to pull people's licenses because they're the fake news, even though we all know who the fake news is. This is an empty threat. I will tell you why it's an empty threat. He knows that if he tries to even do it, that no judge is going to take their side. They tried this before. They have done miserable in the courts. They have lost more court battles than they have won. I just don't get it. I just do not get it. Trump just never learns. He just never learns. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the week. There has not really been anything else. I did receive some breaking news that former FBI Director Robert Mueller has passed away. And then we also had one of the greatest action heroes, greatest martial artists, a true American hero, Chuck Norris, who passed away just yesterday at the age of 86. Thoughts and prayers to his family. I will say this. The guy was the real life Superman. Because, Superman nickname is the Man of Steel, and that definitely can be applied to Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris, of course, also was the Man of Steel. Tougher than a $2 steak. It's actually funny. I saw a video of him. I think he was at WrestleMania. He actually shook hands with Donald Trump. Donald Trump was actually there too, and they actually shook hands, which I think that was actually funny. I'm surprised that Trump didn't bring that up when he found out that Chuck Norris passed away. But anyways, yeah, I really got nothing else to talk about. I think that pretty much sums it up. It's been pretty lazy week this week. I know that the Senate is doing everything they can, or Republicans anyways, are doing everything they can to get that Save Act passed, but there's like minimal options for the Senate to get it passed. And now Republicans in the House are telling the Senate, like, hey, what's going on over there? Like, get your shit together and get it passed. But there's just no way. Unless they have some way. Obviously, John Thune is trying to come up with some way they can pass it, but I think in the end, he's basically going to say, I got nothing. I know the president isn't going to want to hear that, but what do you do? What do you do? So yeah, let's get to the outro because we're going on 39 minutes. There's just really nothing else. I think for my next episode, I'll definitely find out more topics. There's got to be something, even if Congress is dead or government, whatever. So, actually, there is one more thing. So I just heard on, I think it was Newsweek, that the funding for DHS. So there's a semi shutdown, not full shutdown, but semi shutdown that's affecting TSA workers to the point where they're not even coming into work because they're not getting paid. There's a lot of people that I know that won't work TSA because of that reason. Because if there's a shutdown, they don't get paid, which to me is the most fucked up thing you could do. And this needs to fucking stop. This shit needs to stop. Regardless if there is a shutdown or not, they should be paid. If you have to, the people that are responsible for their payroll should also be considered essential workers to make sure that they still get paid. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous beyond something I can't even comprehend. And I don't blame them for calling in sick, because why should they go to work if they're not getting paid? They basically, every time there's a shutdown, they go from being employees to volunteers. Yes, they'll get all that in back pay, but this shutdown is going to last until question mark. I just feel bad for them. And I guess it's like against policy for people to donate money to them so they can have money to get them by until the government reopens. But there's some, I guess, policy that that's not allowed, which sucks. And I think there's going to become a time where all of them are going to get so fed up, they're just going to walk out, because why stay there if they're not getting paid? And if that happens, the airports are going to go into crisis mode. So, with that being said, Donald Trump says that he will send ICE to the airports to assist TSA, and also take over, because I think they're still getting paid. I think ICE agents are still getting paid even though there's a shutdown. Which that means they would have to take more agents off the streets. So yeah, he's telling people that he will send ICE to the airports. Well, we'll see what happens. You don't know with this guy anymore. You don't know if what he says, oh, I'm not going to do that, and then he ends up doing that, or you just don't know. He might do it. He might not do it. Who knows? I tell you, man, it really is. It just really is. It's chaos. Chaos, chaos, chaos. So what's the takeaway from this week? U.S. politics right now is being shaped by one central force: the war in Iran, and everything flows from that. Congress pushing back, courts stepping in, economic pressure building, and the public reacting in real time. This is one of those moments where foreign policy and domestic politics are completely intertwined. And what happens next could have long-term consequences. That's it for this week's political roundup here on Raw Republic. If you found this helpful, make sure to follow the podcast and share it with someone who wants to stay informed without the noise. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.